Yes, Jess, thank you for making it.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Yes, so what's interesting is I am so nervous
Me too.
because I am not used to talking about things that are not about programming. I mean, it is going to be about programming to some degree and software, but it's more like, are we doing a good job with software? And you're looking at it from a perspective of, I'm a designer, I'm a UI person, I'm a UX person, right? So I have notes upstairs. Can I bring them with me? Is that okay? I'm so nervous. So what you could do while I grab my notes,
Yes.
if that's okay, I'm going to leave you alone with this audience. Tell us, about yourself a little bit, right? What you do, what you get up to, and how did you make it to Handmade? How does a UI designer come into a low-level programming conference? How does that happen? Can you tell us that story
Yeah.
while I grab my notes? Yeah?
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course. Well, I think I moseyed into Handmade Boston almost on accident because I didn't really even know the difference between high-level programming and low-level programming. Um, I am a UX UI designer at a startup called Deposit Link, and they're specialized in their payment platform for real estate payments. And I follow Freya Holmer, and she was interviewed by Abner, and I really enjoyed that interview. I heard about Handmade Boston, and I kind of sat there and I was like, I don't know if I really belong here, but I'm really interested, so like, let me jump in. And it was a really amazing experience. I met a lot of great people there, and I recognized a lot of faces, and it's just been really welcoming because part of me feels like I don't belong at all, but the other part of me, like, I'm learning so much and I'm meeting great people, and everyone's been really welcoming.
And I got my notes. Yes, a round of applause for her. This really is my first time talking to a non-programmer on stage. I want to impress. Okay, very cool. So you've told us who you are, right? Now, when we talk about user experience, that can mean so many things, right? It's hard to pin down what we mean by user experience. So we have you here. Can you tell us what user experience is to you?
Yeah, well, specifically to me, because it can be hard to pin down, and it also, it goes beyond software. There are so many industries that care about how people interact with things. But in this case, I like to think of user experience as how a person is feeling as they're going through software. Are they frustrated? Did they come out of it thinking that it was a really quick and easy experience? Did they get confused at all? And my role as a UX designer is focused on eliminating as much confusion as possible, especially for people who aren't comfortable with software. I think a lot of software can be really intimidating. So when people go in and they get an error message that doesn't describe anything, like, that's a problem.
So you're playing a video game and all of a sudden exception crash 0x705342.
What do you do about that? Yeah, or like even if you're filling out a form and at the top, you press submit and at the top it's like, something went wrong. Is it what went wrong? Did I put something in wrong? Is the password that I inputted, like, did that hit every requirement? Like, you're not telling me what to do.
And have you noticed that happening? I just mentioned video games as an example, but what makes it intimidating for people is the fact that something can go wrong, usually at any point in your experience of like you're trying to get something done, you're using this piece of software, and somewhere along the way something could go wrong, and you don't know what it is, and now you're like always like on edge almost. Is that?
Yeah, especially like, for me, it's a payment platform. So you're putting in your bank account information. And if you don't feel like you have control, like if you feel like the computer is going to take over and do something with your information, like you're probably just going to cut a check instead. And that's what we're trying not to do at my company. We're trying to get people to feel comfortable using our software.
Yeah, I think it's pretty handmade to cut a check though. That's how I pay my. That's how I pay my staff is by cutting checks. I'm kidding. I mean, I do cut checks, but anyway. So that's interesting. And it's interesting that you also mentioned that it is the process of us making software and not being graceful about handling error messages in a way that doesn't scare the users. That's if we don't take care of that, then that's bad user experience. So that's one angle of how it can be bad. Are there other ways in which user experience, through our own neglect or not enough care or consideration, can be bad, besides just not handling error messages?
Yeah, I think inconsistent use of UI. So the way that I would approach UI is something that looks the same should do the same, like in as many contexts as possible. So if your submit button is always on the right for the most part, keep it on the right. Like, don't flip-flop between things like that. Toggle buttons, oh my God. Like, if you try to like turn something on and off in a toggle, sometimes there's like no standard. Like sometimes there's a check, sometimes there's an X. Why aren't we using check boxes in that case? Like just little things where people don't know what they're turning on and what they're turning off, and if something auto saves or if you have to scroll down and click a save button. Just little things like that that make people feel like they don't know what's going to happen.
That's interesting. So we've talked of two things. One is we don't handle gracefully certain kinds of things that can go wrong, and that scares users. Another way is that we have inconsistent use of how we lay out the user interface. That's very inconsistent, wildly varies based on like which company did the app and which company, all of that. Is there a third one? I'm thinking of the idea of like people who deploy what's called dark patterns. Would you consider that a bad user experience to be doing that? And what are dark patterns?
I don't even know if I want to consider dark patterns user experience.
Interesting.
So to me, user experience is about providing people, or good user experience is providing people with software that is good for them and easy to use and leaves them feeling good. Dark patterns are for companies' profits, or not profits, I'm not sure what the word is, but it's for companies to make money, right? So I'm thinking user experience is for people to go through their software and feel good. Dark patterns are for the companies, and what those are is companies taking advantage of our understanding of how software works and kind of bending it to their will. And we have
do we have, yeah, we can put up some of the stuff that you have for us here. That's, I love how you don't even want to include dark patterns as even a part of the user experience. It's just so
I just want
antithetical.
I want dark patterns to be something that people don't even want to consider doing. Like, sorry, I'm blanking, but
No, you're fine. Actually, I did want to put up one of your things here. So
yes.
Is this an example of perhaps a dark pattern somewhere? This is
Yes.
You guys know this. I don't think I have to explain it. But by the way, if you can chat on the chat server, I'll also look at your commentary. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, so on Amazon, I buy caffeine mints all the time so that I don't have to drink sugary beverages for caffeine. And because I have purchased it 8 times, they're kind of setting me up to subscribe and save. And there's like not even that good of savings on it. But they're kind of pushing that one purchase option down really far, and they're using a couple different tactics, and I don't know if we can go through the
Yeah,
pages.
you can always say next, yes.
Yeah, next page, please.
Take us to the next picture here.
Okay, so I just really quickly wanted to show you the difference between screen sizes and how that could affect things. So on the far left is what I would normally see, but then the far right is the smallest screen size, where you can't even see the one-time purchase. You would have to scroll down, and usually the theory is like the most important action on a page should be above the fold. You should be able to click it immediately. So that's telling me that to them, the most important action is to funnel people into these subscription models. And they're doing it in kind of a sneaky way. If we could go to the next page. So right here, I'm just showing you all the elements that don't need to be here, but are there and are helping to push things down. So we have this top bar that tells you how many times you've purchased something, and it's huge. It's about 100 pixels, so it's pushing that down.
Oh, yeah.
All these other elements on the right are elsewhere on the page or shared with the one-time purchase, so maybe those could be set up in a different way where it's, again, not pushing things down. You could go to the next slide. Here's an example of just like, technically, subscribe and save and one-time purchase are like these selectable options, and I guess they're trying to indicate that with the radio button.
Yeah.
But radio buttons aren't typically put in the right corners of things. They're normally on the left side of text. So they're technically putting it there maybe so that they don't get in trouble with like, you know, some type of laws or people trying to like point these things out. Be like, hey, we have a radio button. What are you talking about? You see that a lot where like laws will get passed, you know, to try to mitigate these dark patterns, and then they're like, okay, let me tweak this thing just a little bit so that we can still kind of get our way. You could go to the next slide. And then another thing that companies can do is lower the contrast for things that they don't really want you to see. So subscribe and save is bright white. It's got all of these colors. One-time purchase, it's gray. And even the Prime logo is like the opacity was
Oh, I didn't notice that the opacity between the Prime logos are different.
Yep. So like the black on the gray, even the price was also a gray color, which probably does pass some sort of standard for contrast, but likely not by a lot. You could go to the next slide. And then this was kind of what I was getting at with the things that look the same should do the same things, like kind of all the time. So we've been trained, people that use Amazon all the time, that the big yellow button is how you add things to cart. So if you're like on this page really fast and you click this button, you're not thinking about it. You're just clicking the button to add it to cart. You get immediately funneled into the like setup workflow, and it looks exactly the same as just purchasing something. So you might not even realize that you're signing up for a service.
These are examples of dark patterns being deployed, and would you consider that just an attempt to like who even greenlights these decisions, right? Because we
probably investors.
I see. I was hoping the answer was simpler than that.
Yeah, the reason why dark patterns exist is because they're a really phenomenal way to make money. So if you have people who are pressuring you from the top to make them money, it's their choice. You don't have the choice. You can maybe do some things in the background to mitigate it. But if you're answering to these people, you're kind of just answering to these people.
Is there nothing we can do as programmers, as designers, as the creators to maybe fight back against these dark patterns somehow? I'm using this conference in some way, broadcasting this to the world, saying like, we don't like this. We're professionals here, and we're saying we don't like this. Hopefully that's part of it. But do you have any thinking, like from your background as a designer, like what things could we do, even though you have, again, these entrenched corporate interests telling you that what we should do? Is there any way we can fight back?
Well, if you're at a company and you're doing something like this, sometimes there will be like little cracks that open up where people don't know which direction to go in, and you can kind of just snake in and be like, hey, I think this is a really good idea for, you know, this will funnel people into this workflow, or, you know, maybe don't tell them that it's the ethical decision. I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. There's been a few times at my jobs where we're between two workflows, and I'm like, okay, one of them I prefer. I think it's a better user experience. Like, how can I kind of sneak my way in there and argue my case but still appeal to their like money-making senses.
That's interesting to me because when I was talking about the DoorDash example, right? Like I'm sure somebody who implemented the 34 notifications from DoorDash that day, they didn't want to actually do it, but they felt compelled to do it because there's this tension between maximizing profits versus wanting to do well by users. It does make me sad though, the idea that if you want to make the experience for the individual user better, the company loses money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hate seeing it that way. Isn't there a way to marry the two, right? Where you can actually create a healthy way?
To me, it's like they want infinite money. And I think that they would just, if people didn't think of this as like, we need to grow indefinitely and like make a bunch of money and we can just humble ourselves, then I think that would be the way forward. And if you're making your own company, just really considering the way that you get funding. Maybe if you do need investors, see if your investors align with your morals and how you want to design the software.
Indeed. Well, I think that for people like Handmade, right, where we're not, some of us are trying to run a business, some of us are just like building our own little thing over here. What could somebody who's here in this audience, who's maybe just a 9-to-5 programmer, and they're not really even touching the UI stuff, right? What could they do in their lives to create the kind of software that we want to see? Like, do you think there's something they could do, like some kind of, I'm not even sure, right? I don't know what it could be. It could be advocacy, or it could be, it's not like you're gonna go on outside of, what is it, like Microsoft's headquarters and be like, justice for users, justice, right? We have the picket lines. You could do that, but I don't know.
I wonder if part of the issue is that the, average person doesn't understand these problems, and if they did, maybe they would.
Oh, they're not aware that it can be better.
They're not aware that it could be better. They're not, if you're accidentally being funneled into a workflow, you might not realize that you've been charged for this item 9 times, and then the 10th time you're like, oh my God. But part of me wonders if we can like have Handmade like almost like marketing and influencers and people that can reach the wider demographic. There's something interesting happening in the fashion industry where, there are so many issues with like the fashion industry polluting the earth, and they have really horrible labor practices, and people on YouTube are talking about this and trying to get people to buy their clothes differently, and that is kind of making incremental changes in the fashion industry, and I wonder if that's kind of where software needs to go.
I can envision using a Majora's Mask scene here, where the moon is gonna crash if we don't do a better job, and I can be the face of that, and I can see this, influencers.
That's an interesting concept.
Okay,
As far as what to do in your everyday 9-to-5 job, talk to your coworkers about it. There's a lot of times where I have this one coworker who I'm a good friend with, and during our meetings, we'll just like talk about how horrible all this stuff is, and we kind of just like hype each other up. So maybe it's just part of it is just building community with the coworkers, and when those small cracks do happen where the executives or the decision makers don't know what direction to go in, you and your friends that you've made can kind of push things in a direction that you would like to see things going.
I'm tempted to mention Majora's Mask again, but I won't. So I do want to mention a quick story, because the idea of influencing is actually a powerful one, and I know for me to encourage programmers to, I don't know, be all flamboyant or like a butterfly and like having fun and things like that. Maybe you don't like that. You're like, I want to be with my terminal over here. Abner, please, that's your thing. But I want to tell you, like, the reason this conference itself is affordable, right? If you look at conferences right now, most of the tech conferences are like $600 tickets, $1,000 tickets, and they have sponsors, right? This is indie, no sponsors, and it's much cheaper than $600, much, much cheaper, right? You can't deny that. But how do you make it work? And what I do is like 2-week Mexican standoffs with like venue staff, right? And no, really, I'm on the phone, right? And I'm like, hey, how's your daughter? And and it's not a threat.
You're schmoozing.
It's not. Hold on.
I'm not very good at schmoozing.
You're not very good at schmoozing.
No.
No. Is that what it is, schmoozing? No, it's more like authentically. No, I do get I do have a genuine interest in people, not just programming. I don't know if you might have to have exposure therapy if you're not into people, but it works though. That's what I'm trying to say. After 2, 3, 4 weeks of getting to know staff at a venue, whether it's in Boston or if it's in the Seattle Center, they actually get to know me and what my goals are. And I get to know them and what their goals are. And at some point, I say something like, hey, I'm indie. I'm the little guy. All of your rates for a conference are so expensive. It's all geared towards corporations, right? Don't you believe in the American dream? Don't you want to support the little guy? Help me here. Lend me a hand, right? And that's the charm offensive, of course. And like you keep twisting a little bit, like please, right? But I get to know them too. Like it's a symbiotic. Like we like each other, and I'm asking, I really need your help, please. And eventually, miracles do happen. Like they escalate up the chain, and eventually some higher up says, okay, there's a marketing budget that we can use to promote Handmade Seattle as an indie conference that we supported, and we can give you a discount, right? And that took a month. Right? When usually most people just like don't want to go through all that trouble. But that was change. And with that influencing, we have an affordable indie conference, right? Can we take that kind of approach? Can we encourage people to be like this for advocating for apps, better software? That might be possible. I guess you're not, like you said, not everybody's going to be schmoozing, not everybody's going to be like a personable thing, but
yeah, like
still make an effort.
I really feel like if people could get out there and the people that are interested in educate the general public, people that don't know, like me, the difference between high level and low level, and just meet them where they're at and just say, here's what's going on. There are people out there that want to make better software that's, faster and good for you, doesn't addict you, and people will come because people are getting tired of scrolling. They don't want to scroll anymore, but they can't stop. Same with, these other dark patterns. They don't want to be taken advantage of, but they can't help but buy from Amazon because it's so easy. So we need to provide alternatives to normal people.
Yeah.
And tell them, we need marketing. We need to be like, hey, there's this thing that exists. Here's why it's better for you. And, some people can go into more detail. Some people, that's enough to get them going. So.
Yeah. With one of the demos we're going to talk about together, we're going to talk about handmade software. You're going to comment on them. It's going to be fun. So this sounds like to summarize this influencing portion, it sounds like, something like Cactus Image Viewer. It's an interesting handmade example that we think is it is a better alternative to Microsoft's Windows Image Viewer. We really do think so. So the influencing aspect of that is how do we promote that more? Maybe not just at a conference, but in general, tell people about things.
Yeah. The unfortunate truth that we're living in right now is that the best software doesn't always win. It's the software with the best marketing. So how do we improve our marketing?
Any comments on that, by the way, would be very helpful. I'm always thinking about this deeply when it comes to marketing, and because I'm running conferences, right? I'm thinking about marketing a lot. So if you have any ideas, that'd be great. There's a bunch of comments here. So want me to audience commentary? This is awesome.
I hope you guys were easy on me.
A comment that says, the main problem is from thinking in terms of, hey, if I am not making maximum possible amount of money, I am losing money. You can still be profitable, but the mere fact that your profits could be bigger, that's what leads to dark patterns. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not a business person. I don't run a business, and I don't know anything about making money. So take all of that.
Of course.
There's, Obsidian, which is really interesting.
Obsidian, is that .md? Like the little markdown note taker? Oh,
They don't have investors. They make their money from the user base, and so they're trying to fulfill the needs of the user base so that they will continue to purchase subscriptions from them. I have no idea how profitable they are, but that's kind of like the ideal, right? Like,
I've heard that they're doing well.
Good.
From like back channel sources.
yeah, perfect. Yeah. So they're not getting their money from investors, so they don't answer to investors, they answer the user base. And then they also don't have a huge amount of developers on staff. They allow for plugins, so other people in the community can add on to the software, and it seems like it's a system that's really working. I don't know if the average person would want to use Obsidian because it can be intimidating, but it is a system and it seems to be working.
Indeed. And I also want to hear about a little bit more about the UX aspect of, I think you mentioned some of the dark patterns up here. Is you mentioned endless scrolling. I think that's called doom scrolling as well. Would you consider that a dark pattern?
Yeah.
What are some examples of dark patterns like that in the UX world?
So infinite scrolling on YouTube, on Instagram, what that's doing is just sucking you into the platform so that they can serve up as many ads as possible, and that's their way to maximize profit.
Oh my God. I'm seeing here comments, how does UX apply to low-level software? Is it more or less synonymous with API design? I would say so. I guess I'm the low-level programmer of the two here. So I would say so. So API design can make a huge difference. And there's this idea of composable API design. And I'm forgetting one example of the Handmade community that's like really good API design, but I'll mention it on the chat server. I agree though, that would be my main focus for UX for low-level programmers is in the API, and it's about giving them control though, right? So can you do a lot of things in a very high level way? Sure, but then can you make the same thing happen by breaking it down a lower level like Ben was saying in his previous talk. So that's my theory.
Yeah, and in addition to that, with Ben's talk, the horrible documentation for low-level programming, that would be bad UX.
Bad UX is when you write crappy docs. That's important to know. This question, Sam, of course you would ask this question. Is a dark pattern dark if it's being done for user benefit? In other words, is psychological funneling okay if it's not being done maliciously?
So I think the way that I would approach that is dark patterns are for the benefit of the company. So they're taking your data, they're selling it, they're keeping you on the platform to serve you up as many ads as possible. Funneling someone into a feature that they would want to use, I think that's okay, if I'm understanding that correctly. I think you do. The thing about UX is that I guess the ideal, not manipulating people is to just blast them with all the options on the page that are just links and letting them kind of pick where they want to go. But that's really overwhelming to look at. So you do have to simplify and point people into the direction they want to go in. So if you think about if you go to google.com, you're usually going there to search. So the biggest element on their page is their search bar, but they do have other things. You can log in, you can kind of browse through their apps, their terms of service is on the bottom of the page. So those things are all around the border. So they're pointing you into the direction of searching, but they're also giving you the opportunity to do these other things. And that's kind of how I would approach things. So there's the first level of importance, which is the search bar. Then the second level, which would be links to other things. And then a third level, which would be like menu bars that house like other applications you could go into.
Yeah, well said. Next question. Would you think, oh, this is a good one. Would you think dark patterns can be addictive? Infinite scrolling, like mentioned earlier, is addictive. Would that impact how to break out of these dark patterns if users are so acclimated to them?
I think people are getting tired of being addicted to software. I think even I've heard of some young kids that are like, I don't want to be like my parents on their phones all the time.
Really? I want to meet these Zoomers.
I've only heard of them.
They
I
exist.
haven't met them. But yeah, there are people that are tired of it. And, you know, I think 2020 was the year that like cottagecore got really big, where people are like, I just want to go into the mountains and like dance around on a prairie. People are really craving to get away from technology, and like, who can blame them? It's not serving us.
That's amazing. Yesterday, I heard a comment on the trade show that's like, they were saying like, Abner, thank you for putting a face to the creators of the software. And I think that's linked to this, because most software right now, most apps, seeing nods here, it feels like it's just faceless corporate profit-making machines, and like, where's the heart and soul of the software? So they're like linking their face to something. It's also interesting. I think it ties to this idea of like raw nature, like communal. Wow. Yeah, very cool. We need, let's see. Do we need a defense against the dark arts class in our education system? Is that a real question? I think it's an interesting idea, like defense against the dark UX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it.
Did you study that, actually? Did they teach you about the evils of dark patterns, or was your school
No.
sponsored by corporations?
Probably. But UX school for me was focused on like making products for people. Like my first certificate was in UX for the healthcare field, and then I did like a more general certificate. And it's always about like human-centered design. Like we are going in and we're like, the way you research for software is you talk to the user base, you get an understanding for what they need. There was never like in my education, hey, make sure you like get the investors involved and like see what they need.
Yeah, for sure. This is a good question, actually, and maybe we can both answer it together. What are some UX faux pas that programmers tend to make? I know you mentioned not handling, I believe, errors gracefully. If anything else comes to you, let me know, but I have to answer this too. You know, when you close on a window and you're calling a bunch of destructors before the window's actually closing, or you're closing a bunch of resources before the window actually closes, there's no need to do that, right? For the most part, there are exceptions. As you know, I mean, you guys are mostly handmade, right? Like the OS can clean up all of these resources for you. But in school, you're taught that you're supposed to clean up every little bit of resource when the OS can already do that. So you're doing busy work. So that's, I think, another faux pas, because you're waiting, you're slow, like for closing an application, or even for booting up an application, you're waiting 20 seconds. I think that slowness is a UX faux pas, because if you don't have to be slow, you're just doing it because like you were taught mechanically to do it in a lazy way, or like you don't care enough, and it's being slow because of that, I would consider that a UX faux pas. I don't know.
Yeah. I think my example is, so I'm the sole designer right now at my startup. So
Oh, wow.
sometimes what happens is we really need to push a product out, so it just goes straight into development. And what can happen is the back-end team, they don't have any sort of guidelines, so they just do it in the way that makes sense for engineering, without considering like, oh, the user is on this page, so you know this is the context that they have. Instead, they approach it from like, okay, I have all these like pre-built components. They look like this. That's fine. Let's slap it together and push it out. So a lot of the times, what will happen is I'll have to kind of sneak in at the end and be like, okay, let's like move some things around, and like, I'm a big fan of just adding some flavor text so that if people want to read, they can read. People tend to gloss over,
I like that.
you know, descriptions, but they're there if you need them for help. Yeah.
Very nice. This question, you mentioned speaking with other co-workers about dark patterns and trying to change things together. Our industry has seen more worker organizing recently. Ooh, spicy, I like it. Have you experienced or observed any successes of that as a way of fighting back dark patterns? Basically, the idea of forcing decision makers to concede to you and your co-workers' concerns.
Oh, this is a scary one to answer. I don't, yeah, nothing has come to fruition yet, but, you know, there are concerns that I've thought about with the application that I'm working on. And, you know, I am working behind the scenes to be like, hey guys, what do you think about that? I don't know how I think about that. Yeah, I think organizing is good. I just don't know though. It hasn't happened yet for me.
It hasn't happened yet for you?
Not yet. It might.
Yeah. I am getting every year a bit of an inner rage, kind of like growing stronger and stronger.
You have no idea.
Well, more on that in the future.
Yes, talk to me later
Talk
when
to
I'm
me
not
too.
on camera.
Talk to us off camera. There's a lot of commentary. My goodness, thank you guys. Here we go. They're talking about things like, you know, nonprofits versus profits. This is amazing though, right? Because we started, this is an interesting observation to make. We started talking about how to improve the state of software through the lens of UI and UX. How much of this has been about dark patterns and money making, right? It's like glorifying the almighty dollar all over again. I don't want to see this as just the root cause, but it sounds like so much of it is.
Yeah, of course it is.
On the topic of good error messages,
Yes.
I have found I often imagine my mom or grandma when trying to write helpful blocks of text.
Yes.
Is having a target audience a good tool for technical writing?
Well, yeah, definitely. So I'm in the real estate industry, and a lot of real estate agents are old. So everything I do is from the lens of this person did not grow up with a computer. So how do I make it clear that like things are selected and, you know, how to move forward? A lot of the most beautiful, flashy UI is not friendly for that generation of people. Like, you know, if you think about if something is selected and it's really beautiful UI, it might have just like a little like border around it to indicate that's selected. That is not good enough for these people. They need it to be like a very bright color, probably need a radio button. Everyone stop using toggles.
Yes.
Toggles are really cool looking and they're animated, but they just, people struggle with them. So yeah, always have a target audience in mind. And if you don't have a UX designer on staff and you want better UX, talk to the people that are using your software. They'll know how you can improve it. They might give you suggestions that you hate and you don't need to do those, but at least you'll have like an idea of like, okay, they're having a hard time figuring out what to do at this step in the process. What can I do to make this look more clear? How can I explain this better? And that might not even, you know, explaining better doesn't mean to add a paragraph.
Yeah.
But yeah, always have a target in mind and talk to as many people that use your software as possible.
Indeed. I can't wait for you to review some handmade software I have on my laptop. I mean, we're going to get there because you are awesome. So we have a question also here. I'm doing it again, once again, out of order. Sorry. In the handmade community, we often think about making tools for creative work or engineering work. And there seems to be some tension between making a tool that's productive for long-term users and making it learnable for new users. Like, do you have any advice for solving this design problem?
Is this coming, so if If it's tools for creative people, are we thinking about like the beginner creative people? Is that where that question is kind of?
Oh, that is an interesting point. We're going to need some clarification there.
Yeah.
Because that makes a difference then.
I would think so. Like, are we talking about beginner creative people using creative software, or are we talking about like the general public and like general software?
Thank you. If you can do a follow-up, I will ask that. We have more. So, are there a few simple rules of thumb that programmers can keep in mind that will get them 90% of the way to a good UI?
Standardize your elements. Pick a couple, like two colors. So you'll have like your main color for like your most important buttons, and maybe a subdued color for like your secondary buttons. Let's see. Yeah, just keeping things standardized. Really just talking to people that use your software makes a huge difference. I think that is like the big, like one of the biggest parts of being a UX designer is just getting feedback and turning that feedback into like actionables.
Indeed. I also wanted to make a comment about one of our, we're not going to show this today, but there's a software that Ben mentioned on the previous talk called Remedy BG. And I think it's popular enough and it's done well for itself that I think I can even poke some fun at it with love, because he's a great creator, he's a good friend. So Remedy BG is an alternative to Visual Studio as a debugger, right? So, and it's buttery smooth, snappy, right? You load up a giant, multi-gigabyte PDB on Visual Studio, and you're waiting a little bit there to be able to like step through the stack call, the stack frame. You do it on Remedy BG and it's instant, and you can debug your binary right away. And I've shown it to, again, I Social Butterfly, I have many friends, including tech bros, who don't like Handmade at all. who just, they like me, but they hate the whole Handmade thing. They're like, okay.
Really?
Well, they're there for the paycheck. So it is what it is.
You could be there for the paycheck, but then like in the background be really into Handmade.
Also true.
Right?
So I am showing them Remedy BG, and they're like, ugh. And I'm like, what do you mean, right? Like, look at it. Look at how I'm loading up this binary or like this multi-gigabyte PDB file on Visual Studio versus Remedy BG. Look how it's instant. Why wouldn't you use this? And they're like, because it looks clunky. It doesn't look ergonomic. It looks ugly. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't feel this way about Remedy BG personally. But many of the people that I would love to see that this is amazing, they agree, but they're blinded by just the aesthetics. Don't look the way they're used to. Is that, do you think, a concern?
That's going to be a huge problem if we want to compete with the large companies, because people are used to really buttery smooth experiences as the way that something looks. They might not be used to the speed. And if people are okay with waiting around, but it looks really good, it's easy to navigate, they understand what they're looking at, they're typically going to prefer that. So, spruce up your UI skills. I think it also is almost another form of marketing, having really beautiful UI. Yeah, I think people will look at UI and be like, oh, that looks really beautiful. Like, I want to use that. It's almost like designer goods or like a luxury car. Like, they do the same thing, but one is like just beautiful. I think people are drawn to beauty.
Wow, I mean, that is well said. It's a consideration that we have to make. And again, it ties strongly to the previous talk we had as well. So for the question about, the tension between tools for creative folks, and we want to make it productive for long-term users, but also make it learnable for new users, right? He's responded with a clarification. In this case, I am not thinking of the general public. I am thinking about users who are learning their type of work and learning complex tools for their work. Okay. So I think, do you have any advice for solving this design problem of like, okay, there's a tension between this tool, we need to make it learnable for new users who are maybe are experienced in their craft, but new users to the tool. there's a tension between that, he argues, and then making it a tool that's really like for power users, I suppose, right? Because if it's for power users, usually you want a lot more like commands at your disposal and a lot more options that I
Right.
guess could overwhelm the new user to that. So there is a tension there, I guess. And how
Yeah.
do you resolve that?
That something that I run into at work a lot is when I first started there was like a lack of customizability for brokerages. So brokerages across the United States all have different terminologies for different types of payments, and we were pretty much stuck with the Massachusetts terminology, and it took a long time to allow for customization. So I think if you could build your application with customization in mind, like from the ground up, that would make a huge difference. You could have, if someone just downloaded the software, you could maybe have like a beginner template that maybe strips back some of the more complicated features, and then, a more complicated template. I think of like the first time I opened up Blender and I was just like, I've used SolidWorks, so I'm comfortable with 3D, but like, what is all of this?
Sorry, Blender.
Blender is awesome. I think it also comes down to like really good documentation. Like if your software is geared towards power users and you don't want to change that or can't change that, or it'll take a long time to change that, having really solid documentation and videos on how to use a software and how to get started could go a really long way. The solution doesn't always have to be to program something.
So that's
That wasn't a joke. I didn't mean for people to laugh at that.
I'm guilty of, okay. So we have 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I would love it if you can review. By the way, I think she deserves a huge round of applause for the kind of insights that she's given us today.
Thank you.
And you will be around today?
I'll be around today. I love Handmade. I don't know a lot about programming, but I really would love to learn. So if anyone wants to teach me and I could teach you about UX, UI, I'm open to it.
Take the deal.
Please.
For this 10 minutes, I want to look at some Handmade software.
Yes.
And have you rip a new one. Critique lovingly. Okay? So I think we should come this way.
Okay.
The camera should follow us. All right. And I believe there's an HDMI cable somewhere. This is all brand new to me. Here we go. And we connect. I know the staff knows how to flip between things. And we're going to start with what I've been talking about all morning and which we demoed yesterday is Cactus Viewer. We got permission from the creators, by the way, to do this. So it's like, what is Abner doing? Okay, we got permission. Okay? So you guys see this? Yeah? Very cool. Why am I not using Terminal Click? That's a question for later. So here we go. What do you think of just like this image viewer right away?
So yesterday during the demos, I was like really obsessed with this, and I'm sad that it's not a Mac because I'm a Mac only user.
Understandable.
No file open, click open and drag, or drag and drop. I mean, I love this.
Cool. Do we want to open up an image?
Open something up, go for it.
Click open or drag and drop an image to. So where's the? Oh, okay. So this is popping up right here. Okay. Open.
Yeah, there probably could be a use case of pinning that UI on the bottom.
Yeah.
This is not surprising.
So what do you think of this?
I think this is great. Can I?
You can play with it?
Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking like how we can make that bigger somehow. Oh, there we go.
So I'm sure you could. I mean, this is like
I didn't know how to do that myself.
okay, well maybe you should be the one using this and critiquing it.
You continue, please.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think there could be potential for like pinning this down to the side, like maybe leaving it open-ended, like maybe some people don't want to view this, maybe some people might want to pin it. Unfortunately, I think this is a really good piece of software, so I don't think I can really rip into it all that much, but I think this is incredible.
Round of applause for Cactus Image Viewer. Round of applause for Majora's Mask.
I love Majora's Mask.
Thank you.
It's not my favorite Zelda, though.
It's not.
No.
Okay.
No.
We gotta talk about that.
It was my favorite Zelda until I got out of like my edgelord phase.
It's a good thing you're so awesome.
Okay, so this we were allowed to show with the caveat being it was made in 6 days and he couldn't put a lot of focus into the UI. But I'm going to approach this from the instance of he really wants my feedback on this. So yesterday I overheard him talking about how there's potential for this to be like a really good beginner software. It doesn't provide a lot of features, so people that are just stepping into 3D. And if I approach it from that, if it's the first time I'm opening up a 3D software, position, scale, rotation doesn't completely, like it makes sense to people who use 3D software, but maybe it needs to have more context. Maybe everything on this side, we can see the mouse, yes, could be stretched out a little bit more and maybe just have like, each section has its own box. I think that the font choice is difficult to read, especially at this size. This font is like really stylized, and I think it'd be a good idea to leave stylized fonts for maybe like 24 pixels and up. Anything at this size could be a sans serif that is, a little bit more simple, like Roboto, Lato, Mullish.
The creator's defending himself that he tried. Cool. Anything else?
Rayliv had a bug, so you had to use that? Yeah, that's the default font?
Someone make a GitHub PR.
Yeah. Someone can change that, please. I'm not sure if that's a great default font. Something more readable would be better.
Understood.
Okay, so that's not really a critique of this software. Also, I do wonder if you're a beginner in 3D, maybe approaching it from like a light mode perspective, like making it way more friendly. Things could be more round, more like almost like childlike, like you're literally, he was saying, playing with clay, like making it feel like I am a child playing with a little toy. If you were to go down like the beginner route, like this could be a really amazing software for like middle schoolers if you want to gear it towards, young beginners.
What if you play with the actual shape making? Is there anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, so I played with this the other night, and I was a little bit confused by the gestures and like the speed at which like moving around goes. I'm like barely using my fingers. And the first time I opened this, I like immediately just like lost my cube. I think I zoomed in, which I'm not sure how to do. I did it on my Mac. I think I like zoomed into the cube too far and couldn't figure out how to like refocus it. So having like a focus button that like zooms you back out and like puts the cube in a position that would be like a good default.
To be fair, I don't know how to zoom in either on this Windows machine.
Yeah, on my Mac, I was just kind of like pinching and zooming.
Yeah, Rayliv doesn't support pinching.
That's interesting, because I was able to do it with my Mac.
Ah.
So I don't know.
Okay, so apparently Rayliv doesn't support pinching on the browser natively, at least on Windows. You said you could make it happen on Mac.
Yes.
Interesting
And
conundrum.
that's how I got lost. So.
Like 90% of the like UI stuff is limited by Rayliv. I just didn't have time to read it.
So one thing that I really would love to get into is just learning more about like low level UI. And every time I try to Google it, I like can't understand. So if anyone wants to explain that to me like later, that would be amazing. Because I am interested in programming, but you know, like the talk earlier said, I feel like I don't have the aptitude to like actually learn it.
I think people here like you. So we're going to teach you, you're going to teach
I hope
us.
so.
I think so. So to defend Raylib, of course, it is a great library. And it's geared towards, you know, video games programming and making quick and fast UIs. So maybe there could be room for constructive feedback here, but I know they have a different target too. So that's an interesting question. Like, who's the target for this? Like, I guess if you can make something quickly, are you sacrificing fidelity and like professionalism in some way necessarily?
And I think that's fine. I think if you're making a quick prototype like this was, I think that this is like incredible. And you could bring something like this to a group and be like, hey, this is what I can build, and here's some ideas that I have in the future, and then build on top of that. And I think that this is like perfect for that use case.
We should give a round of applause and thank you for the creator.
I love it. I really do.
We're gonna finish with this bad boy.
I'm scared to comment on this one. I don't want to break the developer.
This is Dante's Cowboy, for anybody who's like not up to date. Dante's Cowboy was shown yesterday, and he agreed also to let us play with this.
Yeah, so don't love that the instructions are on the right and kind of always towards the right. If I understand why you would want to keep them like there, especially for like demo purposes, but maybe centering it on the bottom here or up top. You could maybe have like a bar going across the bottom that's a solid color, so then you don't have to worry about readability with like the white text on top of all of the different colors, which he does when you speak. Someone's gonna talk. Yeah, so he does it right there, where he has like the shadow in the back. So he could do the same thing at the bottom or the top and just put the eat or interact, pick up items, R to drop, F
Gotcha.
to use. Another thing that this is actually a really good example for anyone that's interested in UI design. I personally like to make submit buttons stand out, and especially against cancel buttons. So maybe you could have the submit button be a solid color with black text, and then the cancel button could potentially doesn't even need the border, just so that, you know, if you type something like that, you don't accidentally click the cancel button because it like kind of weighs the same amount as the submit button.
Because you're absent-mindedly, right? Quickly doing these things.
Yeah, so like when you're designing things, keeping in the hierarchy of like importance. So like we were talking about with the Google example, the search bar is the biggest because it's gonna be the most used, it's the most important. That's at the top of the hierarchy, so you want to emphasize that the most. Whereas the cancel button here, I think, let's see. Yeah, so the cancel button is like, if there's 1, submit, 2, cancel, 3, menu, in that order of hierarchy. The menu's perfect. It's there. I know where it is. I can click on it. I know it's going to happen. So that's good for third. Submit being the number 1 important thing should have like more like design to it. And then cancel being kind of in the middle should be in between, like, okay, it shouldn't be as small as the menu button, but it shouldn't command as much attention as the submit button.
Can I ask, what if, I love that insight. What if the video game, the mechanics of the video game always have you canceling all the time? Would you then invert the logic?
Yeah, the most important thing, no matter what it is, can be the most eye-catching visually. Right,
so if you're always canceling on this game, then that's what you would
Exactly.
give the hierarchy of priority number one there. Gotcha.
And then the other thing that I was wondering, and I think I just need the developer's insight, I don't know what's happening with these loading bars. I am assuming like he's submitting to ChatGPT and you're waiting for it to come back. But sometimes, why are you laughing?
Because it's funny for us that ChatGPT. Sorry. Yeah.
Let's see. Yes, okay, so the loading happens. I'm not sure who's going to talk, so it would be nice if it was possible to indicate like who's gonna be the first one to talk. If you continue, you see that guy has the loading button. Like what happened?
Oh, I see what you mean there, yeah.
Maybe there could be a text of like, Bill is thinking. Like just, or like an icon, like two different icons. So one's like a processing icon and one is like something's about to happen icon. Just a little bit more clarity as to what's going on.
I see. So the fact that it's just loading over there, you're like, but why?
Yeah, because
Right,
sometimes,
it's a scary thing.
sometimes it loads and then they answer a question, and sometimes it loads and nothing happens. And sometimes they like talk to each other. So it's just hard to tell like what's gonna happen next. So it'd be nice to have like some sort of indication, if that's possible. I have no idea how this works.
No, absolutely. And again, we thank the creator for like letting you review this. I don't know if you have any final observations here, or do you feel like that's
We're all set.
those are the biggest things?
Yeah.
For us, the idea of a video game written from scratch connecting to ChatGPT all the time is really funny.
Yeah.
That's why we were laughing. But we love this demo, of course. Round of applause for Dante's Cowboy, of course. Of course. And for herself as well. You did a fantastic
Thank you.
job today. Amazing. I really had a lot of fun.